By order of the confessor, I begin to write what passes between me and our Lord, day by day. The year 1899, the month of February, on the 28th. I confess the truth. I feel great repugnance. The effort I have to make in order to conquer myself is so great that only the Lord can know the torture of my soul. But, O holy obedience, what a powerful bond you are. You alone could conquer me, and overcoming all my repugnances, almost impassable mountains, you bind me to the will of God and of the confessor. But please, O holy spouse, as great as my sacrifice is, so much help do I need. I want nothing but for you to hold me in your arms and sustain me. In this way, assisted by you, I will be able to say only the truth, only for your glory and to my confusion. This morning, as the confessor celebrated Mass, I also received communion. My mind was in a sea of confusion because of these obediences that are given to me by the confessor to write everything that passes in my interior. As soon as I received Jesus, I began to tell him of my pains, especially my insufficiency and many other things. But Jesus seemed not to care about this thing of mine and did not answer to anything. A light came to my mind, and I said, "Who knows whether I myself am the cause for which Jesus is not showing himself according to his usual way?" So with all my heart I said to him, "Oh, please, my good and my all, don't show yourself so indifferent with me. You make my heart split with pain. If it is because of the writing, let it be, even if it costs me the sacrifice of my life. I promise I will do it." Then Jesus changed appearance, and all benign, he told me, "What do you fear? Have I not assisted you the other times? My light will surround you everywhere, and so you will be able to manifest it." Purity of intention. While he was saying this, I don't know how, I saw the confessor near Jesus, and the Lord told him, "See, everything you do passes into heaven. Therefore, see with what purity you must operate, thinking that all your steps, words, and works come before my presence. And if they are pure, that is, if they are done for me, I take greatest delight in them, and I feel them around me like many messengers that remind me continuously of you. But if they are done for low and earthly purposes, I feel bothered by them." And as he was saying this, he seemed to take his hands, and lifting them up to heaven, he said to him, "Your eyes are always on high. You belong to heaven. Operate for heaven." While I was seeing the confessor and Jesus saying this to him, in my mind it seemed to me that if one operated in that way, it would happen as when a person has to move out of one house to go to another. What does he do? First, he sends all his things and everything he possesses, and then he goes himself. In the same way, we first send our works to take a place for us in heaven, and then when our time comes, we go ourselves. Oh, what a beautiful cortege they will make for us. Faith. Now, while seeing the confessor, I remembered he had told me that I was to write about faith in the way in which the Lord had spoken to me about this virtue. While I was thinking of this, in one instant, the Lord drew me so much to himself that I felt myself outside of myself in the vault of the heavens together with Jesus. And he told me these exact words: "Faith is God." But these two words contained an immense light, such that it is impossible to explain them, but I will say what I can. In the word faith, I comprehended that faith is God himself. Just as material food gives life to the body so that it may not die, so does faith give life to the soul. Without faith, the soul is dead. Faith vivifies. Faith sanctifies. Faith spiritualizes man and makes him keep his eye fixed on a supreme being in such a way that he learns nothing of the things down here. And if he learns them in God. Oh, the happiness of a soul who lives in faith. Her flight is always toward heaven. In everything that happens to her, she always looks at herself in God. And so, just as in tribulation, faith raises her in God, and she does not afflict herself, nor does she lament, knowing that she is not to form her contentment here, but in heaven. In the same way, if joy, riches, pleasures surround her, faith raises her in God, and she says to herself, "Oh, how much more content and rich will I be in heaven." So those earthly things are a bother to her, and she despises them and tramples them underfoot. It seems to me that to a soul who lives in faith, it happens as to a person who possessed millions upon millions of coins and even entire kingdoms, and someone else wanted to offer him a penny. What would he say? Would he not disdain it? Would he not throw it in his face? I add, and what if that penny were all muddy, just as earthly things are? Even more, what if that penny were only lent to him? Now this person would say, "I enjoy and possess immense riches, and you dare to offer me this miserable penny, so muddy, and only for a short time?" I believe he would immediately remove his gaze from it and would not accept the gift. So does the soul who lives of faith with regard to earthly things. Now let us go back again to the idea of food. By taking food, the body is not only sustained but shares in the substance of the food, which is transformed with the body itself. The same for the soul who lives in faith. Since faith is God himself, the soul comes to live of God himself, and by feeding herself with God himself, she comes to share in the substance of God, and by sharing in him, she comes to resemble him, and to be transformed with God himself. Therefore, it happens to the soul who lives of faith that just as God is holy, the soul is holy. Powerful God, powerful the soul. Wise, strong, and just God, wise, strong, and just the soul. And so with all the other attributes of God. In sum, the soul becomes a little God. Oh, the blessedness of this soul on earth, to then be more blessed in heaven. I also comprehended that those words which the Lord said to his beloved souls, "I will espouse you in the faith," mean nothing less but that the Lord, in this mystical marriage, comes to endow the souls with his own virtues. It seems to me that it happens as to two spouses. As they join their properties together, the belongings of one can no longer be distinguished from those of the other, but both of them become the owners. However, in our case, the soul is poor. All the good comes from the Lord, who lets her share in his possessions. The life of the soul is God. Faith is God. And the soul, by possessing faith, comes to graft all the other virtues into herself, in such a way that faith is like a king in her heart, and the other virtues remain around it, as the subjects that serve faith. So, without faith, the virtues themselves are virtues that have no life. It seems to me that God communicates faith to man in two ways. The first is in holy baptism. The second is when blessed God, by unleashing a particle of his substance into the soul, communicates to her the virtue of making miracles, like raising the dead, healing the sick, stopping the sun, and the like. Oh, if the world had faith, it would change into a terrestrial paradise. Oh, how high and sublime is the flight of the soul who exercises herself in faith. It seems to me that by exercising herself in faith, the soul acts like those timid little birds which, for fear of being caught by hunters or of some other snare, establish their dwelling at the top of the trees or in high places. Then, when they are forced to take food, they descend, take the food, and immediately fly back into their dwelling. And some of them, more cautious, take the food and don't even eat it on the ground, but in order to be safer, they carry it up to the top of the trees, and there they swallow it. In the same way, the soul who lives in faith is so timid with earthly things that for fear of being snared, she doesn't so much as glance at them. Her dwelling is up high, that is, above all the things of the earth, and especially in the wounds of Jesus Christ. And from within those blessed rooms, she moans, cries, prays, and suffers together with her spouse Jesus over the condition and the misery in which mankind lies. While she lives inside those holes of the wounds of Jesus, the Lord gives her a particle of his virtues, and the soul feels those virtues within herself as if they were her own. However, she realizes that even though she sees them as her own, her possessing them is given to her, for they were communicated by the Lord. It happens to her as to a person who has received a gift that he did not possess. Now what does he do? He takes it and makes himself the owner of it. However, every time he looks at it, he says to himself, "This is mine, but it was given to me by so-and-so." So also does the soul whom the Lord transmutes into himself, by unleashing from himself a particle of his divine being. Now this soul, just as she abhors sin, also feels compassion for others, and prays for those whom she sees walking on the path of the precipice. She unites herself with Jesus Christ and offers herself as a victim in order to placate divine justice and to spare creatures the deserved chastisements. And if the sacrifice of her life were necessary, oh, how gladly she would make it for the salvation of one soul alone.